What would you do if the salty tang of ocean air you've loved your whole life suddenly tasted like betrayal? If the crash of waves against ancient rocks your family's heartbeat for generations became the soundtrack to a nightmare orchestrated by some pearl-clutching busybody with a clipboard and a god complex? I'm Alex Harper, 42, and I thought inheriting the old Harper Lighthouse on Whispering Cove meant second chances. A quiet life running a cozy B&B, sharing stories of shipwrecks and starlit skies with guests who needed a break from the grind. Instead, I got dragged into a war over my own damn legacy, exposing a scam that would have swallowed the whole town if I'd rolled over. If you're watching from a creaky porch in the sticks or a high-rise overlooking the bay, drop a comment. Have you ever had a neighbor turn your dream into their vendetta? Because trust me, you're not alone. This one's for all the Davids out there, slinging stones at Karens who think clipboards are crowns. It started on a fog-draped morning in late spring, the kind where the mist rolls in off the Atlantic like a lover's breath, cool and mysterious, carrying the faint brine of seaweed and promise. I'd just finished scrubbing the brass lantern room, polishing those curved panes until they gleamed like the eyes of some forgotten sea god, when the crunch of tires on the shell-strewn drive yanked me back to earth. My boots, still gritty with salt from yesterday's tide pool hike, stuck a bit as I descended the spiral stairs, the iron treads groaning under my weight like they were whispering warnings. The lighthouse itself, a squat, whitewashed tower on a jagged bluff overlooking Whispering Cove, Maine, a postcard-perfect fishing village where lobster traps bob in the harbor and the air hums with the low drone of gulls. Built in 1872 by my great-great-grandpa Elias, who'd lost 2 brothers to the rocks below, it wasn't just stone and beam, it was blood and bone, our family's anchor in a world that kept trying to wash us away. I stepped out the arched oak door, wiping my hands on my faded flannel, the fabric soft from years of salt air and elbow grease. There, blocking my path like she'd manifested from a bad real estate ad, stood Evelyn Hargrove. Mid-50s, with a helmet of ash blonde hair that could have doubled as a helmet, and a linen pantsuit so crisp it screamed I ironed this at dawn. She clutched a leather folio like it was the Ark of the Covenant, flanked by 2 beefy guys in ill-fitting polos embroidered with coastal guardians, her ragtag enforcers, locals she'd bullied into volunteering for her cause. The wind whipped her silk scarf, carrying the sharp, oversweet whiff of her Chanel No. 5 clashing with the honest funk of low tide. "Mr. Harper," she trilled, voice like a foghorn wrapped in velvet, "we need to talk about this eyesore you're turning into a circus." Her eyes pale blue, cold as oyster shells raked over the lighthouse, lingering on the fresh coat of cheery yellow I'd painted the keeper's cottage in. The Coastal Preservation Society has received complaints. Your renovations are disrupting the natural serenity. And that sign, Harper's Beacon B&B, it's garish. Vulgar, even. I blinked, the fog beating on my lashes like tiny accusations. "Evelyn, it's a bed and breakfast. Guests love the sign hand-carved by my cousin in Portland. And last I checked, this is private property. 50 yards outside the village historic district." Her lips thinned into a line that could have cut glass. "Technicalities, Alex. The Society's charter extends to all visual impacts on the cove. We've got ordinances. Fines start at $500 a day." She thrust a laminated notice at me, the paper crinkling like dry kelp. It bore a fancy seal eagle over waves and dense legalese about aesthetic encroachments and heritage violations. The wind tugged at it, and for a split second, I caught a whiff of printer ink, fresh and fake as a tourist's tan. I scanned it, my stomach tightening like a knotted hawser. This from the town never heard of a Coastal Preservation Society issuing citations. "Oh, we're very official," she purred, tapping her folio. "By laws ratified last year. Now, If you don't cease operations by week's end, remove the sign, repaint in muted grays, and limit guests to educational tours only, will escalate. Permits revoked. Maybe a little call to the harbor master about your dock. Her smile was all teeth, the kind sharks flash before the strike. The gulls wheeled overhead, their cries sharp as laughter, mocking the absurdity. What would you do? Laugh it off, call her bluff. I handed back the paper, forcing a grin. Evelyn, I've got blueberry scones baking and a family from Boston due at noon. How about we chat over coffee instead of threats? Her eyes narrowed, and she spun on her sensible loafers, gravel crunching like bones underfoot. This isn't a negotiation, Mr. Harper. Heritage isn't for sale to hoi polloi. As her goons trailed her to the black Escalade, tires humming expensive rubber, she shot one last barb over her shoulder. Ask your late father about respecting the cove. He knew better than to commercialize sacred ground. That stung, deep as a nor'easter. Dad, Captain Tom Harper, had tended this light for 40 years, his call-used hands logging ships through fog thicker than pea soup, until cancer took him 2 winters back. The lighthouse was his legacy, willed to me with a note scrawled in his weather-beaten script, "Keep the light burning, son. For the lost ones." I'd sunk my savings, every penny, from 15 years as a marine biologist tracking cod migrations off Gloucester into converting the keeper's quarters. Exposed beams, quilts from grandma's loom, a wraparound porch where guests sipped chowder and swapped ghost stories about the Lady of the Lantern, a spectral widow said to haunt the stairs. It wasn't profit, it was purpose. 6 rooms at $150 a night, just enough to keep the salt at bay and honor the ghosts. But Evelyn, she was the ghost I hadn't bargained for. Widow of old money, her husband, a rum-soaked developer who'd drunk himself into an early grave. Evelyn had washed up in Whispering Cove a decade ago, buying the Grand Victorian on the bluff next door. To the villagers, she was Lady Hargrove, queen of the garden club, always swanning about in volunteer vests, organizing clam bakes she never attended. But whispers in the bait shop painted her as a climber, eyes on the cove's untouched bluffs for her pet project, luxury condos branded Eternal Tides, where trust funders could sip 20 IPAs while pretending to care about preservation. Rumor had it she chaired a real estate syndicate, greasing palms for variances. The Coastal Preservation Society, her invention, a sham front to bully holdouts like me into selling cheap. My lighthouse sat smack on the bluff's prime parcel, panoramic views, historic cachet. To her, I wasn't a neighbor, I was an obstacle. That first notice I chuckled it off over scones with the Bostons, the buttery crumbs melting on my tongue like fleeting peace. But by dusk, as the sun bled orange into the waves and the porch swing creaked under me, doubt crept in like tidewater. Dad's pipe, still tobacco-scented after all these years, felt heavy in my pocket. I pulled out my phone, snapped pics of the citation, and fired off an email to the town clerk. "Verify this," her reply pinged back at midnight, "no such society on record." Sounds fishy. Fishy. Yeah. But Evelyn's next move turned suspicion to storm clouds. 2 weeks in, and the lighthouse hummed with summer's promise. Guests raved about the foghorn coffee, strong as a southeaster, brewed in a pot Dad had salvaged from a wreck, and the tide charts I'd etched on reclaimed driftwood. I'd even started a logbook for visitors, sketches of seals sunning on the rocks, haikus about moon tides. Revenue trickled in, enough for fresh boys on the dock and a new coat of marine varnish on the Widow's Walk. Then, one sticky July dawn, the harbor master's truck rumbled up, its diesel growl cutting through the herring gulls' chorus. Out climbed salty old Pete Landry, mustache twitching like kelp in current, clipboard in hand. "Alex, hate to do this, Pete muttered, the faint reek of chum on his boots mixing with the briny haze. Got a complaint? Says your dock's impeding migratory patterns. Need to inspect. I led him down the weathered granite steps, the air thickening with salt spray that stung my eyes. The dock's sturdy oak pilings Dad and I had hammered together jutted 20 feet into the cove, perfect for kayaks and crab pots. Migratory patterns, Pete, it's a dock. Birds fly over it. He poked around, muttering about encroachment, but his eyes said bluff. Evelyn Hargrove filed it through the society. Threatened to pull my grants if I didn't follow up. Grants for his junior lobsterman program. Evelyn's reach, slimy as eelgrass. By noon, another notice arrived via certified mail, 1,200 fine for unauthorized marine structures. Sealed with that eagle. I paid Pete for coffee at the Snug Harbor Diner. Greasy spoon smells of fried clams and fryer oil to spill more. She's got half the board in her pocket, he grumbled over Black Joe that could have stripped paint. Pushing this preservation nonsense to clear the bluff for condos. Your light's the crown jewel blocks her view corridor. Stakes hit home that night, as I locked up and the beam swept the cove in lazy gold arcs, painting foam-capped waves like brush strokes. This wasn't just my livelihood, 80K invested, dreams of retiring here with a dog and a banjo. It was Dad's ghost in every creek, Mom's recipes in the guest breakfasts, her lobster rolls, mayo tangy with secret celery seed. Lose it, and I'd be adrift, another drifter haunting motel lobbies. But fight that meant dredging up the fighter in me, the one who'd spent nights in waders, netting samples through gales, proving overfishing's toll to deaf policymakers. Razy.